welcome to today's episode. And I have the Cincinnati Bengals quarterback, Jake Browning, former Washington Husky, former Folsom High School, legendary at both Folsom and Washington, UW. But I grew up a Duck fan. And so you're knowing that right now. I know that put a smile on your face. The most, I think, points ever scored against an Oregon team was from my man here, Jake Browning. And I would hate to say, I'd like to say that like nobody saw that coming, but everybody saw it coming that year. And boy, did you deliver on that one. So we're going to get into that a little bit as we go through the college stuff. So welcome,
Yeah,
Jake.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jake, can you kind of walk us through a little bit about, you're in the NFL now, but could you walk us through a little bit from the time that maybe you were in youth sports, youth football? Did you play other sports? And just kind of give me a little bit of a background and an overview from youth to the NFL.
Yeah, started playing football when I was 8. Started playing basketball when I was about 5. Moved to Folsom. Both my parents actually went to Oregon State, so I was born in the Portland area. Lived there for 5 years. Don't remember it at all. So most of my memory is growing up in Folsom. Like I said, started basketball when I was 5. Was always a pretty good basketball player. Started playing football when I was 8. Played all the way through. Uh, Junior programs and all that. And so, yeah, we were always, for anybody that knows Folsom football, usually know the high school. I would say the junior program plays a huge role in the high school success. And I can kind of attest to that firsthand. Uh, Fortunate to have some great coaches, play with some great players, but playing in a town that really valued football and made it feel really important, which, sometimes I think that can have a negative spin to it, where you have the helicopter parent, stuff like that. But my experience was just having coaches that were really into it and loved it, made it feel important, which when you're that age, if your coach makes it feel like it's really important, then you think it's important, and then you're super excited when you win. You take it very seriously. So that was kind of my experience through junior football. Went on to Folsom High School. Played freshman football as a freshman, and then my sophomore year, started on varsity. Did not play, stopped playing basketball in 8th grade. Originally, my plan was to take a year off. I was going to play my freshman year, and then the starting quarterback job, they kind of said right after my freshman season that it was completely open and the best guy was going to win it. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, I've always kind of liked football a little bit more, but wanted to really focus on winning that job and thought it would be an advantage if everybody else is playing a bunch of sports and I was just playing one. So then fast forward a year, I had a good sophomore season and started getting recruited. So then it kind of turned into, let's put basketball on the sidelines and kind of just focus on this and see where it goes. So played 3 years of varsity at Folsom High School, and then went on to Washington.
That's fantastic. And then you played for Coach Pete at Washington, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I started as a true freshman there in 2015, and then played 4 years for him. So yeah, sophomore year or my freshman year, we were pretty young. Went to the Heart of Dallas Bowl. We were fighting those last couple games of the regular season to even make a bowl game. And then my sophomore year was the year we went and played Alabama in the Peach Bowl in the playoff. And the year after that, we played Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. And the year after that, I played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Unfortunately, lost all three, but had some good seasons to get into those
Man.
games and just came up short in a few of those.
Yeah, that's some high caliber football. Probably some of the most in recent history for Washington. It was really good watching you guys, John Ross, those guys that were there. You guys had a squad in that defense. Those DBs were nasty.
Yeah.
They were
Chris
really
Pete did a
good.
really good
So
job getting all of us there. There's always kind of a 500, 8 win, every now and then a 9 win, and we're able to take it to another level and kind of the culture that came with that. Obviously, had good players, but I think there was a lot of culture stuff involved there that was pretty cool to be a part of and witness. I remember when I was getting recruited, and then Coach Pete went over there from Boise right after my junior year. I remember Troy Taylor, my high school coach, saying, it takes 3 years to establish a culture, and his third year there will be your sophomore year, and you guys will probably be really good. And I just always that always kind of stuck with me, even before that actually became a thing where he was right. Just kind of always stuck with me. Like I could have maybe gone some places that had better records that year, like my senior year or junior year, had better programs at that time, but kind of want to be a part of something where you're building something.
Yeah, Coach Pete. Yeah, that's Coach Pete was. He seemed like he was a pretty special guy as far as what he did over at Boise State, and he's just well respected. I mean, you just listen to the guy, and you're like, yeah, I'd follow him. He just seems like that type of guy, and even with what he's doing now, like just out of the limelight, I kind of keep up with follow him and what he's doing, and he seems like just a good guy all the way around, and I'm sure he was a pleasure to play for.
Yeah, it was.
Um, I would like to kind of go back. Let's talk about like youth football. You were in the Junior Bulldogs program, and can you tell me a little bit like what were some of your habits? Did you like when was it that kind of you were like I'm pretty good at this like football thing because you were playing basketball too at the time, and so I'm sure you're like a lot of kids kind of do at that age. Your attention's back and forth, but what was it about that junior bulldog program, and then what was it about kind of just being young and having some early success, or what kind of led you into wanting to continue to play football?
Yeah, I think early on, you're so young, like you don't know what you don't know, so you're just playing. I remember thinking like, okay, I didn't really have like a specific time. I'm like, oh wow, I'm really good, or anything like that. It was more so just I've always been, I think, very routine, even as a little kid. Like I just practice started at 4:30, and I was there at 4 with my helmet on and my mouthpiece in at like 4. So it's I'm like the first one there, and I was always just kind of in basketball you'd call it a gym rat, but I was just always there at Livermore. If I was on the Mighty Might team, we'd play early, and I'd be one of the last ones to leave at night, and I would just stay there all day. So I loved it. Um, so I think I think some people have that thought of that time where they remember like once I did this and this, then I knew I was good. I don't really have that specifically. Because we always had really good players on our team, and the expectation was always, we were going to win, and we did win a lot. So, my dad was one of my coaches. He's definitely good on, when you're doing really well, he's going to keep you humble, and then maybe when you're struggling, he's going to say, hey, it's okay, like kind of build you up, but he's going to be kind of the counter force. So, I don't really think I was ever allowed to get super big headed or too cocky when I was growing up. So I think, and then Kirk Crandall was another name who was always a junior football coach. And I think he was kind of the one that, like I said, spearheaded it on just making it feel like it was really important, and it was super exciting when we won and stuff like that. And so I think I just loved it when I was little and everything, and I was just kind of set up in a junior program that was kind of built to win, and you just had to work hard.
Did you have good work habits, would you say, at that age? Did you do extra work? Was there private lessons kind of a thing like it is now? Like I know it's all over the place. You kind of have to almost do that to keep up. Was that a thing when you were
I
there?
started doing so Troy Taylor again. He ran a thing called Passing Academy, uh, which was basically just like I think it was like an hour and a half on Sundays. I started doing that when I was 10. I remember, uh, I don't remember how much it was. It wasn't like a crazy amount. I mean, I think it was like $40 an hour or something right around there. Where it's not a crazy amount. My dad had a good job and stuff like that, but he made me do extra chores throughout the week. So I think his goal in that was if I'm putting in the time during the week at a young age, like to have the maturity to know, like, hey, this is something extra that not every kid gets to do, and so to kind of take it seriously. But as far as the work ethic stuff and all that, like, it didn't feel like a work ethic. Like I wasn't doing anything I didn't want to do. Um, I just was obsessed with it and spent as much time as I possibly could on it, just working at quarterback and throwing. My dad played quarterback too, so that that always helps to have, especially when you're really young, just having someone that at least
Yeah.
somewhat knows. Like I remember a couple times I'd scramble and run. And he's like, "Hey, this guy's way faster. Like just scramble and then dish it and let him go run because that's his job. Like he breaks tackles and runs. Like you're there to make the decisions and get the ball to the playmakers. So just little things like that that I think made an impression. Um, and then but like I said, the work ethic, I think it was there, but it wasn't like I was just doing straining away at it and doing something I didn't want to do.
Yeah. So okay. That's really interesting to hear. That first of all, you had a dad that was there that made you earn it. I think that's fantastic. That's probably a great parenting tip to have. So he would have you do extra chores
Yeah, you just say
just
like,
to be able to show
okay,
up. Was there ever a week where you didn't earn it and he was like, "You're not going"?
no, I think it was, it wasn't super regimented or anything like that. I just say, hey, here's a
Right.
couple things you got to do throughout the week to kind of, make up for paying a little bit extra, and you're younger, and so you got to show that you're mature enough to go do this and realize that this is like a luxury thing. Like not everyone gets to go do this, and so I think for the 10-year-old me, it made it feel like, oh wow, like this is important. And so when I was there, I was super focused and all that. And but like I said, like I loved it. I was obsessive. I am obsessive still.
Still to this day.
It's been like a 19-year addiction.
Well, it's been one that's worked out for you. Did you guys win a lot of championships in youth football? Were you guys
Yeah, I
was it
think we
competitive like that or
won maybe
no?
two or three. Can't totally remember, but we won a lot. The expectation was, I mean, I think even now you go to the Junior Bulldog, I think out of the five teams, probably three to five are going to be in the championship game, and that's not really an off like a it's an off year if that's not the case.
Yeah, so it hasn't really changed.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, it's the same thing. So I coached against the Junior Bulldogs when we first came down here, and it was just a nightmare every time we played full. Like you just kind of knew the buzzsaw was coming, and the talent, the organization, everything through Folsom has just been it really good, like next level type of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I think that
um,
plays a huge role, and you go play at 8:30 in the morning. It's like all the parents are there. It's important, and everybody's pretty bought in. It's a well oiled machine. Um, you're playing at your own stadium. I mean, all that stuff. Just when you're young, you're just like, damn, this is sweet.
yeah, for us, it was a little deer in the headlights, like, "Whoa, okay.
Yeah,
This is we weren't prepared for that." But moving into high school, so Folsom High School, national powerhouse, and really it was probably just starting to happen right before you got there, and I think when you were there, probably kind of pushed it up another level, especially with that 2014 season, which is iconic and talked about to this day. And I'll share a little story about that in a minute. But why don't you tell me about the transition from now the junior program to coming into high school, where it gets way more intense, more serious? Like, how did you handle that? What was that like?
yeah. So my freshman year, I split time on the freshman team. So I think we had like 70 kids come out for the freshman team, and so we had two offenses. And so I had my receivers, and then the other quarterback had his receivers. So we would just alternate drives. And so I kind of got in the habit of staying after and throwing a bunch and just doing all these extra little things because I was kind of a late bloomer in puberty too. So I was just smaller than everybody. And then finally, and
Like what size? When you say smaller as a
I
freshman?
remember my friend Alejandro was 175 faster than me, and I was 100 pounds, and I was just small. Just
How tall were you?
I don't remember how tall I was, but I grew like 6 inches in the summer. But during that time, I was so much smaller than everybody. I remember my dad saying, "Hey, look, like this guy's 75% bigger than you. He's faster than you. At my weight, that would be someone being 340 pounds and faster than me. That's not going to happen. Like you're going to catch up, and you're not going to be this. You're going to hit your growth spurt. It's biology. Like it's going to happen. So you can either work on a bunch of these little things that'll pay off down the road. Practice throwing with timing because you don't have as strong of an arm. Practice having good pocket awareness. Just practice the work ethic. Like how much harder you have to work when you're so much smaller and still trying to keep up with everybody else. I think paid off to where I built that stamina of being able to work hard um, throughout a whole week and just day by day sticking at it. I think a lot of that comes from me liking football, but also that time period where I was smaller than everybody else, and just to have some type of success, um, I had to work so hard, and so then biology happens.
So you had to use
I
skill.
had to use
You had
skill.
to use
Yeah, I
skill
think so
whenever.
many
Yeah.
people that get hit those growth spurts earlier, like so much of their ability to play the game is built on that advantage of size and height and speed and just biologically being a grown man when you're playing against a bunch of little boys basically, and I was a little kid still, and so I always kind of say that to kids around that age that you can go look at any eighth grade football teams. There's the haves and the have-nots, and at some point, it's here. The separation is here. It starts to get to like here, where right here you're really athletic. Right here you're not as athletic or not as big. And so as that gap closes, the people that have been working on the skill level and sticking at it and building up that stamina and endurance to be able to work really hard for a long time, those are the people that it's gonna pay off. And so I kind of hit that growth spurt my freshman year, split time there, and then had this like hunger and stamina for working hard, and then got matched up with Coach Taylor kind of at the perfect time where for us football started. It was PE. Like we had advanced conditioning, and we would just run routes and run plays starting in January, and I loved it. I was there every day, first one there, last one to leave, and I always just wanted more and more and more and more. And I had fortunate enough to have a coach that could deliver more and more and more for me to do that was actually going to translate to me being a better player. And so I think that's where you kind of saw it take off my sophomore year. Uh, but I just think that time where I was smaller, building those habits kind of led to that hit along with a growth spurt, and then along with a coach that was very high level and very invested in my success. That's kind of what led to, I think, my high school career success.
Yeah, you were 200, was it 229? Let me see. I'm going to pull this up here. 229 passing touchdowns in your career.
Yeah,
That's an insane number. That was tied for the national record. You threw 91 touchdowns your senior year.
yeah,
91 touchdowns.
yeah.
And if I am correct, that team also, you guys had 16 running clocks, and you won the Division One state championship with a running clock. And I think did you guys trail 7-0 in that game or something? Somebody scored a
Yeah,
touchdown
they
on
scored
you.
first. It was 7-0, and then we scored. I think it was like 60 something unanswered points. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, I was a good player, but part of being in Folsom was, and there are probably like 10 guys on that team that I had been playing with since I was like 8, 9, 10, that all started playing football at the same time. So you have some guys that maybe people don't know their names, but they're really good football players in high school. Maybe didn't check, certain size or speed box for their position to go play at a big time college, but were, damn good high school players. And so I know now there's a lot of people that want to transfer into Folsom, and we definitely had some of that too. But we just had a foundation of guys that had played a lot of football and had won a lot of games. And there's a certain level of commitment that comes from that, and then also a certain level of what your habits are and what your expectations are. So all that paired along with some really good high
Yeah.
school coaches, Troy Taylor, Chris Richardson, Bobby Frescas, uh, where we were a well-oiled machine, and you kind of knew just showing up to some of these games, like we're going to kill these guys because of what happened in the last. I mean, they're 15 years behind, or they're 10 years behind
Yeah.
We've been doing this for so long, and we've killed this team for 10 years.
So that team specifically was it's known as the most mature team. I've heard Coach Doherty talk about that team a million times. And other people around that's been around the program for a while. What do you think he's referring to when he says maturity for that high school team specifically for you guys?
I mean, he's probably referring to a lot, but I mean, we had a lot of guys getting recruited, um, but then some of our guys that were getting recruited the most kind of set the standard for, okay, like we've lost my sophomore and junior year, we lost to De La Salle last game both times, and so we were always one game away from getting the state championship. And so for me, I was probably one of the more recruited guys. I didn't let the recruiting stuff kind of take on a life of its own. I'm not going to sit here and say I was like the most mature person and all that at that age, but I had a dad that was like, "Hey, keep the main thing, and don't this recruiting stuff is nice, but at the end of the day, you're going to pick one, you're going to go to it, make sure you make a good decision and all that, but don't turn this into something more than it needs to be. Like you don't need to act like some celebrity or anything like that." And on top of that, those names I listed as coaches, they ran a tight ship, and I think they kind of always steered a lot of us in the right direction because I think Troy Taylor knows this, and I knew it at the time. If you're a good player at Folsom, every college coach, if we had no good players, every college coach is still coming to Folsom and asking Troy Taylor, "Hey, who are the best players?" And every recruiter that flies into Sacramento, the first stop they're going to make is Folsom because they want to know who the good players are. They want Coach Taylor's opinion. They want to see all the players there. So I get that part. Like there's some guys at smaller schools that maybe have to deal with some different things that I didn't. But I think the maturity wise was just very focused on the day to day and what you're doing to get better. And I think that started with a group of us that were some of the better players that we were pretty focused on that.
Tell me a little bit about the day-to-day, habits of that team. I've heard that you guys showed up and it was like even the weekends you guys at certain times you were running basically your own practices, like just amongst players only, meeting at the park, going through like can you tell me a little bit about like what that actually took to reach the level that you guys reached?
Yeah, so I think a lot of our practice habits are established in our PE class where we're throwing routes on air, we're doing a lot of stuff. So you get used to a certain amount of throws a week. And so anytime we didn't have practice, we were all getting together, breaking into the high school field or going to Livermore or whatever it took. I kind of coordinated that, but a lot of other guys like Will McClure is a name that comes to mind. Where every time we throw, I'd kind of say, "All right, that's it," and he'd be like, "No, one more." And it's like, "Okay, Will, like I'll throw you one more." Like, nice, you pushed me further than I wanted to go. Like you worked harder. But I think when we lost those games to De La Salle, we kind of set up off-season lifting program and speed and conditioning program that Val Lalagi ran. And again, fortunate to have Val, who really knew his stuff and was really dedicated to it, and his son Bailey, who was on our team, was one of our better players. Um, and so I think we had 6-period PE, which was basically practice without pads, 4 days a week. We had lifting 4 days a week, and we had speed training 3 days a week. Every lunch, we'd go watch film. Even in early, February, we filmed everything in the PE class, and then the next day, I would come in at lunch and we would watch it. Uh, Whenever we had a study period, if you didn't have to go make up a test or anything, you were coming to football and we were all going to watch film and go over what plays you wanted to try or what plays we were doing and watch practice. Our huddle, we were expected to watch. If we practiced on a Tuesday, we were expected to watch that practice that night. And Coach Taylor would go in and put notes on like the certain plays, like JB skipped one in your progression, and so you would. I think for some guys, they had if he thought you weren't watching it, then you had to text them all the notes. Um, and so it's just for me, it was perfect. I could see how if you're just kind of playing football because all your friends are, it could be probably a little intense. But for me, it's perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for, and I think there was a lot of guys on our team that that's what they were looking for too. That they didn't care about a lot except just wanting to be really good at football.
So would it be fair to say that you guys did kind of all the little things, all the details, you obsessed about it? So you hear you the lunchtime thing, I mean, for a high school kid to wanna go watch film during lunch, that is I mean, that's pretty dedicated because there's a lot of other things that high school kids would like to do during lunch,
Yeah,
but, and I know that still goes on, to this day that kids go in and they watch film, like, there's a certain I don't know if it's all of them or if for you guys it was all of them. I know
I think
that's
it's
just
for
part
us.
of
It
the
was
culture there at Folsom, though.
quarterbacks during lunch, and then they have I forget what they call it, but it's like a little study period, Wednesdays and Thursdays that every skill player has to go to. And I think the O line would even go in and watch stuff with Richardson during those times too. So yeah, I think there was some habits established that uh, kind of gave a blueprint to here's how you can get some results that you want. And so I'm sure they try to do as much of that as they can.
Now on a maturity side, what do you think about when kids kinda make it funny? Is there some of that stuff? Like, did you guys ever have like, I guess there's fun and then there's serious, and then where's the line? And it sounds like you guys had established that line pretty well, so I'm kinda curious what that secret sauce was for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that line was. I think we were just like anything, even in the NFL. Like people will put up with a lot to win, um, but it never felt like, at least to me, and everybody's got a different experience. It never felt like too much to where it was like not fun. Like I was having a blast doing it. I'd rather go do football than really anything else. Like and I didn't really know any different. Like I just thought this is what we do. Like I go to lunch, I go in for film at lunch, and that's just I didn't know any different. So I didn't really think like, oh, is this isn't fun, and I'm doing it. It kind of goes back to like it was a full on obsession, and to this day it still is. Like I don't go many days without I don't go a day without thinking about football and thinking about okay, is my daily schedule like set up to give me the best chance to succeed on the field. Whether that's what time I go to bed, how much water I drink, what food I eat, anything. And then it's once I feel comfortable with that, then I'm kind of like, all right, what's the next thing I can do that's more? And so for me in high school and having an intense kind of schedule like that, I loved it. It was great. I would have been pissed if we didn't do it.
Would you how would you deal when your teammates were, say, goofing off? I'm sure it's different in the pros and it was different in college, but in high school, how did you guys, I mean, you're dealing with, kids that are much more immature in high school,
Yeah.
right? More uncomfortable, more insecure. How did you guys as teammates kind of draw the line, or was that just the coaches that drew the line there, or was it some of that self-governing
There was
as
definitely
well?
some self governing. I think Coach Taylor and Richardson kind of ran the show, but there was definitely some where like if somebody was not showing up to lifting and all that, you just kind of asked, told the guy, hey, go being an idiot, like trying to win, either get on board or don't. And that sounds harsh, but that was kind of the expectation. Like don't stand in the way of what this whole big group of us are trying to accomplish. Like either get on board or don't. And and there were some guys that didn't, and that's totally fine. Like that's their decision. But I think a lot of us had high aspirations, and if some guy's not showing up to the speed training workout, it's kind of like, hey, what are you doing? Let's get to speed training. And if you don't, then don't be surprised if you get beat out because we had a lot of good players.
That's really good. That's good stuff. That's good to hear. And so hopefully, if there's any aspiring college players, high school players that are listening, would you say exactly that? Show up to your workouts, do the work,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
and don't goof
don't be
off.
the
Or
guy that
yeah,
that isn't doing it himself. I think I was always pretty focused on just doing my own thing and making sure that I was doing everything. And I was fortunate to have coaches that kind of drew the line on what was going to happen. And at the end of the day, I was fortunate to be at a school that we were pretty deep at some different positions. Like there were some good players that did not play because they got beat out. And so that's not the case at every high school. So I mean, as you get
yeah,
older, into college and NFL. I mean, there are certain players that I would never say that to some players, but when we're at Folsom and I was, we had plenty of guys and all that, but you just got to know, especially if you're a quarterback, you kind of got to know your different teammates, and now they're going to respond to different things, and so having a good relationship there. But I would say the number one thing would be make sure that you're walking the walk too. Nobody wants to listen to the quarterback that's not walking the walk, and then when it's time to break it down at the end, he's missed a bunch of workouts, but he's going to break it down and say how we need to be working harder. So everyone's just going to think like you're a poser. So
Right, right. So was there closing up on the high school, was there a moment or is there any specific moment that really stands out in your mind?
ooh, um, I would say the state championship because it was. I mean, they changed the rules, so we never beat De La Salle, but there was a lot of years, not a lot. There were 2 years of losing those games. You're just pissed, and you just sucks, and everybody's pissed that we lost, and we got beat pretty good both times. And so then I remember,
Seems like it bothers you still to this day.
yeah,
Does it bother you a little
a
bit?
little
Yeah,
bit,
thinking
yeah.
about it? Yeah, yeah.
I wish we would have played them again because it's like it's a little bit of an asterisk. Like you feel like you only won because they changed the rules. So, but that being said, I remember before the game, Coach Taylor kind of saying like, "Hey," because none of us had really played a full game because we were winning so much. So you would pull everybody. We had a ton of seniors, and so I remember him telling us before the game like, "Hey, just so everybody knows, like no one's getting pulled out of this game. We've worked it way too hard. We're practicing all these years year round, weightlifting, speed training, 6 period advanced conditioning, throwing routes on air. No one's getting pulled." And so it was kind of like, all right, like pulling the brakes off, and we ended up just absolutely killing them. And so it was just
It was like 63-7 or
yeah,
something, is that right?
yeah,
So or 60 something to 7.
yes. I
Yeah.
think I want to say
Yeah,
like
that is
right, like
crazy.
69, 68, something like that. But it was, I mean, it was a lot. But I remember right,
Yeah.
right when he said that, I remember thinking like, we're about to kill these guys. So that one was kind of just the final like ending. I remember another one that I kind of thought like, all right, like we're legit. Is my sophomore year. We played Oak Ridge. I think I want to say like week 5 or something like that. And they were good. They were ranked higher than us in the Sacramento B or whoever was doing the rankings. I forget. And so we were playing there, and we came out and started fast. I think I don't even know what we beat them by, but we beat them pretty good. And I remember thinking going into that game, it was super intense. It was loud and all that as our rivalry game. And that was one where I was like, all right, like we're good. Because we played some teams before
Yep,
that were good, but you never really know. But every year Oak Ridge is good, and so beating them
yep.
was pretty cool.
And was that at Oak Ridge
Yeah.
or at Folsom?
No, there's at Oak Ridge.
It was at Oak Ridge,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're rowdy too over
Yeah.
there.
And I think they had
So
like
that's
they had like
that's a good one.
tagged our school or something like that too, like graffiti. I don't know. There's something, and it just went there, and it was. I know from Folsom to Oak Ridge, you always. I know maybe it's different now, but back then, Coach Taylor had us convinced that they were super arrogant and always thought they were going to beat us. And so you go in there thinking like these guys think they think they're going to kill us. And so and that one kind of stands out too.
I gotcha, okay. How about moving into college? So you played for Coach Pete. What was that like?
Uh, Very organized. He knows how to run a very good program. Very rarely you're doing something where you're like, why am I doing this? Um, and everything has a purpose to it. It's explained well. It's everything's communicated very well. The expectations are communicated well. Um, and it does everything to set you up to succeed.
Okay, so you're a freshman coming in from Folsom. You're this decorated high school football player. What is it like when you step into the college game, the speed of the game? Like, is it much is it a much bigger transition, much harder transition from like youth football to high school? Maybe freshman to varsity, or from high school to
I
college?
think,
What is that transition like?
yeah, I think for me it was the biggest transition because the rest of them you're kind of transitioning along with everyone else. So I think if I would have redshirted, and then once everybody else in my class or my age kind of starts getting on the field, then I am too. We're all kind of making the steps together. But I showed up and was immediately playing my first year, and so you're playing against guys that are been there for 5 years, they're redshirt seniors or whatever, and so you're by far the most inexperienced there. And yeah, it was a transition period for sure. I remember at the time we didn't know how good our defense was, so I showed up there for spring ball. I graduated early and got there in January, and so in April we're doing spring ball. The first practice, I throw a couple picks, and practice in Folsom and even games in Folsom. Um, I didn't throw any picks, and we scored every drive. So it's just that transition to okay, now we're not just dominating anymore. Um, this is a battle. Like those players are really good too. So it was it was a learning curve for sure, where you got to get used to, like you said, running clock every game, throwing all these touchdowns, not throwing any picks. We're better than everybody, and now it's back to the bottom of the totem pole. And so I think adjusting to that and kind of adjusting my weekly and daily routine to take that on was kind of what helped me. But it was an adjustment for sure.
So your sophomore year, so your freshman year, you said you're not very good, but improving. And if I remember correctly, I think so I can look at this from like an Oregon perspective, fan perspective. It was a competitive game. I remember. I think they beat maybe by like, a couple touchdowns, but it wasn't like the previous seasons.
Yeah, we
And then
lost. I think we
I
lost.
think there
I
was
remember actually we lost to Oregon by 6 because
yeah,
I separated my shoulder that game, and then we had a 2 minute drive at the end. And I couldn't throw, and so our backup went in. But yeah, we pretty much we were in every single game except for like maybe one. We just kept losing these close games, lose another close game, lose on a last second field goal, throw a pick in a 2 minute drive, fumble in a 2 minute drive. Just damn. But the locker room never turned, and so and everybody kind of rallied around like we're gonna be good and we're gonna make this bowl game. Everybody stayed pretty positive on it, and it was actually pretty cool to be a part of because obviously I knew I had more football ahead of me. So it's you're kind of playing the long game with your own career, but trying to win as much as you can and get it better as quickly as you can. But some guys that were maybe a little bit older, like a Jadon Mickens, Tony Tupo, Marvin Hall, some of these guys that were older and like, hey, this is my last season, and we're depending on a true freshman quarterback, running back, left tackle, a lot of different positions that are pretty important. And so for them to not really let the locker room turn at all was pretty cool to be a part of.
was that a product of Coach Pete and just steering the ship correctly? Was that the culture that you were talking about? Coach Taylor had alluded to that takes 3 years. Could you kind of feel that
Yeah,
from the time that you stepped on campus?
yeah, I could feel it. I mean, it was definitely a transition time a little bit. Like there were some guys that were not bought into that at all. I mean, this is back before you could transfer, so Sark left and he kind of ran things a certain way, and Coach Pete came in. There's some guys that were having no part of it. And I think some guys that maybe had no part of it initially and then slowly started to buy in. But I think it's a combination of Coach Pete setting the stage. But I mean, you can have the head coach up there saying whatever he wants. If your senior guys or the guys that I pull in the locker room um, aren't following it, then it's kind of just words. You can put it in everybody's mind, but nobody's doesn't mean everybody's just going to take to it very well. And so I
Right.
thought we had a couple um, older guys that helped me through that as far as just how to navigate and kind of take the lead and have some faith in me as I developed. You kind of just would always say things like, "Hey, this guy's going to be really good. I swear, he's going to be good. Like we have all the faith in the world in him." And so just stuff like that. 'Cause I was playing well, but I just when a couple of fresh mistakes here and there, go, come on, like can't be doing that. But I think my general demeanor, everybody knew I was working really hard at it. It wasn't like I was, you know, not bought in. And so I think that helped. But just like any college locker room, your best players and your oldest guys are going to have the most pull, and those are the guys that kind of steer the ship.
Yeah, and sometimes with a new coach, that is just what happens. Senioritis, or they're not bought in, and it's impossible to kind of really have that season that you're probably capable of. I mean, I actually I feel like I witnessed that at Folsom High School when Coach Taylor left. There was a little bit of that. So I've seen this around, and I think that's pretty common in sports.
Yeah,
Um, so going into your sophomore year, then maybe the culture is more established. What was the change between freshman and sophomore year? Because you guys had all this success your sophomore year.
yeah.
I mean, just kind of
I
turned the
think
corner,
the
right?
big thing that happened was we went on a little winning streak at the end of my freshman year. We were playing good football, and I don't remember how many we won in a row. It was like maybe four or something like that. But we had to win like the last, I want to say like 3 games, maybe four, to make a bowl game. And then we did that, made the bowl game, won the bowl game. And so we kind of just, you kind of started to see like we were getting over the hump just a little bit. And we had a lot of people coming back. We were really young. And so we had some, I can't remember, there wasn't really any crazy true freshmen that came in. We had some good players, but like a lot of our main guys were guys that struggled through that. And in hindsight, John Ross was hurt, so that was a big one. He missed my whole freshman year with a torn ACL. So that always helps too when you show up for winter workouts, and John's over there running a 4.25 8 months after ACL surgery. So you're like, okay, well, let's keep that guy healthy. And
Yeah.
defense was really good. Brought back a lot of guys on defense, offense, and it just we had the best offseason where you could just kind of feel like, all right, I think this is something special, but I don't totally know because I've never been on an elite college football team, so you just don't totally know. Um, and then we got to the season and started rolling, and it was pretty special. We came out fast, kept starting fast on offense, and really getting after guys once we got a lead because our defense was so good. And so um, I remember kind of similar to that Oak Ridge game. We played. We were coming off a close game in Arizona where we won in like triple overtime, and then we're playing Stanford on a short week on a Friday, and they're ranked higher than us. I think we were both like top top 10, top 8, something like that. And they came to us and we got after them pretty good. And so that was kind of a similar like, all right, like we're pretty good. And then kind of rode that into next week we played Oregon, and then it was kind of rolling from there.
So
So
there's yeah.
it was a pretty cool thing to be a part of where it was similar to Folsom where you're like, I think we're good, but I'm pretty young and I don't totally know. And so then you have that one game that kind of gives
So
some validation.
that off season, maybe you mentioned this off season, and did you kind of feel like that was similar to maybe some off seasons that you had at Folsom? Was that like taken seriously? Were there some comparisons that you could draw there with the type of energy and stuff that you did, or was it just something totally
I think
different?
it's a combination of coming off some success where you felt like the locker room was in a really good place. Guys were connected, guys got along, were hanging out, and working really hard. And then you get in the weight room, the workouts got high intensity. Strength coach is doing a great job, but the guys are bringing it every single day, and we're battling. And then we get to spring ball, we're battling in practice, and we got big plays, and we're having some back and forth on offense and defense, and you just can kind of feel like an energy. Um, I would say it was similar to Folsom. Folsom was always kind of the expectation because they were good long before I got there, and so it was always like we're always here. Whereas Washington had always kind of been here. We're trying to make that jump, which is hard for a program, even if you got good players and all that. So you just kind of felt an energy where guys are connected. You got a good team chemistry and all that stuff that people talk about, and a good culture, and along with some really good players. And so it's kind of that blend of really good players, really good culture, and then then it comes down to execution. But you have something there.
I see. So let's go to the Oregon game here. So one of the probably the most iconic poses in Washington history is the
Yeah.
point, right? The point. What was it about that, like that play? I don't know if you probably ever thought about it or whatnot. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'd actually like to know. And then was that like a sign of we're here, we've got you, we've got your number? Like it was a very alpha move, probably one of the most alpha moves I've seen there happen at Autzen Stadium. It was pretty iconic from a Washington standpoint. So I'm curious what you were thinking. And then when you went over to the sideline, did Coach Pete have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think there was definitely I'd separated my shoulder against them the year before, and, really felt like I missed an opportunity to go beat them that year because I couldn't play, couldn't throw, and then and they'd beat us, however many years in a row, and that had really been put in our face, and so yeah, it was a little bit of like this is over, like this, and I think so it was pretty early in the game. I mean, I think that was the first touchdown of the game, so we were only up like 7-0, but it was just we definitely had a mentality coming in there like this is the changing of the tides a little bit, like there's no more of this. 'Cause there were a couple plays that game that were kind of like we beat them, but there were a couple where it was like it was a demoralizing, you know, embarrassing loss. And so, yeah, I think there's the attitude of, and I'm probably the last guy that anyone expected to see that come out of, but yeah, you're in the moment. We hate Oregon. We've been rubbing it in our face for however many years, and so yeah, let them know a little bit.
You let him know that was very iconic. That was also Justin Herbert's first
Yeah, I
start
know.
as a true freshman against you guys. He threw first right out of the gate. He threw a
Buda
pick, I
Baker.
think, that led to that touchdown, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Buda Baker. You guys had some guys on that
Yeah,
team
that's a
for
tough
sure.
first start for
Uh,
Justin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a tough couple seasons. So moving on. Okay. So you guys go to the playoffs, and then that year you win the conference championship, go to the playoffs, you play Alabama. What was it like going from now we've you know, and just 2 short years ago you were playing, in a state championship game. Now you're here, you're playing Alabama in college. Can you talk about that game? Because that to me it was a more competitive game than what the final score probably showed. I mean, I felt like watching that game, it felt like you guys were just, you were there, but it was just like certain plays weren't happening. You tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I think I mean they're best defense who played all of college by far. I think all those guys got drafted really high and went on to play. Um, and so you knew there was just a very small margin for error. So I think we went down and scored the first drive. Then we started just having a couple turnovers. But as far as getting ready for the game and all that, I think I was so isolated from any media stuff. Like when I'm playing, I limit the ways that people can reach me. Like basically, you have to have my phone number, and you have to call me, and I have to answer in order for me to like interact. Just limit it, and it's it can piss some people off, but it's okay. We're trying to win, and so I'm not watching ESPN or listening to any talking head about what this game is because nobody knows what that game is more than I do because I know the game plan and all that, and I've kind of carried that throughout my career of just when you're the guy and you're playing, you really just you got to limit ways that people can reach you. You got to limit your media intake. Especially the higher up you go, the more there's going to be media stuff, and so and just focus on the things that actually are going to help you win the game. So when I'm getting ready to go play that game, like obviously I know it's a big game. I'm not dumb, but I'm not listening to Skip Bayless's opinion on how we're going to do anything like that. I have no idea. I haven't listened to a word that guy said my whole life. So, it's just, you got to go in and focus on the things that are important. And all the other stuff is like, I get it. It builds up. It's why football is so big is the media circus around it. And it's a product, but my job is to go execute. So I'm just going to focus on that.
Yeah, so that game leading up and going in, you guys knew you're playing. We're going into Alabama. Were you guys focused, loose? Like, tell me a bit. Like, how was Coach Pete? How did you guys prepare? Talk to me about that a little
Yeah, I
bit.
think it was pretty focused and loose. I don't really specifically remember one way or another, where it was um, super tense or super loose or anything like that. I just remember everybody kind of being like, "Hey, we're a good team too," and we go let it rip, just like we always do. And so, ended up losing. But I think when you're going into the game, you got to just be fully prepared. Just go all out and let it rip. Be prepared.
Yeah, you're one of what, 2 Pac-12 teams that have ever made the
Yeah,
playoffs, and you were offensive player of the year that year as well, is that correct?
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So offensive player of the year, like that year was a fantastic year for you. But so you had this. If I'm sitting here watching, you have your championship, you're a champion in college, you're a champion in high school, you're a champion in youth, and now you're going to the NFL. Talk to me about what that transition has been like.
Yeah, it's definitely been challenging. Having to, I've been up and down off P squads and just trying to compete. And so, kind of thing that happens with quarterbacks is there's not enough. If you're a receiver, you're going to get plenty of reps to kind of show what you can do. And so, for me coming in, I went undrafted, didn't play a lot my first preseason, just so that they could put me on P squad. And the next year's COVID, and so there's no preseason. Which, if you're an undrafted quarterback, that's your resume. So basically, there's 2 years there where I don't have a resume, and then just be kind of battling to put yourself in a position where it's actually an open competition. And so the way it kind of works is if you're somewhere and they draft a guy and they've already paid him X amount of money, he's going to be the backup. And so I've gotten in a few times, and I've always kind of been a rhythm player, so it was a little bit harder to just jump in and play well right away after not playing for so long. But this last off season felt like I had a strong one to build off of, and kind of got that feeling again where it's like, all right, like that's how it feels. That's how it's, how I've made it this far is still got it. Like you always kind of thinking like, especially when you sit there for so long without playing a ton, you're like, yeah, do I still have it? And then you play and you're like, all right, like that was good, and can kind of build off that. So that's kind of where I kind of feel like now, competing for the backup spot with the Bengals and have an open 50-50 shot where, there's no one else on the roster that is kind of guaranteed the position. So feel good about it, excited for it. It's a lot of hard work to get here, a lot of patience to get here, but hopefully have this be a launch point where build a build a nice little career of competing for backup spots, starting spots, and get to play a little bit.
How is that? I mean, you're behind, Joe Burrow, obviously, but how is that? How do you keep yourself mentally locked in? You're here, you're fighting for a backup spot, all this, and then, but you could be, I mean, in a matter of 2 months, you could all of a sudden be the starter of something. Chips fall a certain way. You're all of a sudden the guy, and you're expected to be, locked in and ready to go. How do you keep yourself ready, mentally prepared when you're a competitor, you're a champion, you've got the pedigree, like, but you have to, you are where you are. You're not the starter. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think you got to create a good routine for yourself. That's kind of always been my, I guess, secret sauce or whatever you want to call it, is just having a good routine and refusing to not do something on that routine. So if I tell myself, hey, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I'm going to do it. There's no debate unless there's some new information that there's a better use of my time. And so doing that, I think has allowed me to continue to develop as a quarterback, even though maybe I'm not getting a lot of reps. There's so many different things going on that you can't control, and I think the higher up you get, the more that becomes a thing where you're used to a certain level of success and used to, like in college, I had control over. I got every single rep from starting like my freshman year. So you kind of build some habits of that's your way of developing. And so you get to the NFL, and that's not the case. Like my rookie year, I'm not taking any ones reps. Like Kirk Cousins is taking those because he's going to play. And so you got to find other avenues that can help you improve, without losing that self confidence. Like for me, I still train every day like I'm getting ready to be a starting quarterback somewhere, and that's just the reality. And And I think the way that you need to go about it, and everything. When I go wake up tomorrow morning and go throw with my quarterback uh, coach, I'm telling him like, hey, treat me like the standard is I want to go start somewhere and be a starting quarterback. So my training needs to reflect that. I can't just be sitting here hoping that happens. Um, but then also putting into perspective like what the actual reality is. So like last year, they told me, hey, it's this guy's job to lose. So I could go have a great preseason. Um, and as if the other guy didn't lose the job, like it was going to be his job. And so you don't want to let the fact that I was on P squads or anything like that, mess with your confidence. So having a realistic look of, hey, here's what my situation was and the result, and not maybe getting too focused on the result, but focus on here's what I did, here's what I need to improve, and just constantly doing that, and not, but then also not letting that mindset of constantly needing to improve mess with your confidence.
Right, right. So, like a situation in San Francisco that happened last year was it Brock Purdy, um, like that. He just goes from what third string was he
Yeah,
third string into thrust into the starting role, and then like hello, like I'm here and I'm expected to do my job. So staying locked in, staying focused, acting like you're going to be the starter. You're saying are the things that you're doing right now to prepare for that type of
yeah.
situation.
Like when Joe gets ready to go play the game on Sunday, like I fully expect to know the game plan just as well as he does. Maybe I didn't get the reps, but I threw those routes after practice. And just not keeping that standard in your preparation, that you're not going to just be the guy that's like, oh, I'll turn it on when like it's my time to shine. Um, and so I think that's helped me, and it's also put me in a position that I'm in now where I can compete for a backup spot.
So you'll actually go and throw those routes after
Yeah.
practice if you didn't get the reps during the yeah,
Yep.
that's really good. Okay, so you've been all the way through. You've been through these successful programs. What are the common so if I'm a kid listening, what is some advice that you could give, let's say somebody that wants to go be a good quarterback, maybe they're a youth or middle school quarterback, and what are some of the key takeaways I think from you? It sounds like you had first of all, you had a good father who kept you pretty grounded and whatnot. Um, but what if I'm there? I don't have that person in my life. What are some of the things that I can control and do, and what advice would you give them to get better?
Yeah, I think taking a realistic look at your situation. Like some guys come from families that are going to spend a bunch on different training, and that's great, but that's not the reality for everybody. So taking a realistic look at your situation and figuring out, okay, what is the best routine for me to get into? What does a really good Monday look like in January that I can a Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What is a good routine that I can get into? And what are the boxes I need to check each day to get the most out of my time towards this goal? And I think some guys can get really caught up on, there's some frustration that comes with guys that have more resources than others, and you know, I sympathize with that. But at the end of the day, at some point, you're going to get older and older, and you just got to deal with that and figure out your way. They're going to do it, whether that's YouTube or whatever, and figuring out like cheap place to work out, watch quarterback throwing stuff on YouTube, like just constantly having that mindset of like growth mindset you hear all the time, but just take the growth mindset stuff and put it into tangible things you can do every single day. And so, for me, it was a little bit different. I had a good high school coach, and I had some resources to be able to go do some different things. But I think the mindset stuff uh, will definitely help you, because at some point, like once you get to the level I'm at, everybody has the same resources. So everybody has resources to go work out. They have the resources to buy the healthy food. They have the resources to get a quarterback mechanics coach. So then it kind of comes down to, are you like, do you value it, and are you going to do that, or do you kind of just value like hanging out and doing your thing, which is fine too. There's a time and a place for that, but I think taking a really good look at your situation, finding the best way to consistently improve, and putting that into a tangible thing that you can do weekly in a routine. I think is the key. And I think that applies really for any position.
What if there was one drill or say one focus point for a quarterback and to get better? Is there a cert? Is there anything that you could say that is kind of a blanket like these are the these are the absolute fundamentals that you've got to at least have this dialed in?
Yeah,
Is it footwork? Is it like
I would say I
what
would
would
say
that be?
throwing routes on air with your receivers. Uh, you know, there's no resources needed for that. You just need a ball, you need some receivers, and you need a field. And so I think a big part of football is being able to be on the same page with your receivers, especially for quarterbacks. And so just reps. I mean, the amount of reps I have of routes on air just throughout high school is absurd. And so I think that played a big role in being on the same page and the different timing stuff. And then as you start to do that more and more, it's quickening up your release. It's focusing on little things you can do to improve. Really doing a deep dive on quarterback mechanics. There's so many resources online and different free advice on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and just try and take in as much as you can and figure out what you think is actually worth it and what applies to your game. And then just work on it. Whether that's setting up a little tripod to film yourself throwing and correcting it or whatever. I mean, there's creative ways to get better. There's a lot of guys that really good quarterbacks that didn't come from a bunch of resources, and so I think there's uh, a lot of free advice and just do as much as you can with it. But I would say the routes on air is the biggest thing as you're trying to develop as a young quarterback.
Okay. I just have a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. But can you talk a little bit about the the discipline side that maybe that, and you've spoken on this some, right? But the discipline side of being able to block out distractions like in the recruiting process. And so if you're like if you're a recruit, if you were talking to a recruit and somebody that's that was a highly sought after national recruit, or if they're just getting their first offers or whatnot, what advice would you give to those people and how to deal with those offers and in those situations?
Yeah, I think it's a sliding scale. Like if you're a guy that's if you got 50 offers and all that, putting yourself out there more and more. Like I think there's a certain point where like, hey, let's just make a decision and move on. Like I think that will pay dividends as you should go to show up in college locker rooms. I mean, nobody's getting killed more than the guy that is the big social media guy and shows up and everyone's looking to see, okay, is this guy good or not? And the second you mess up, you're just like, oh, he's just all hype. And so I think there's it's just knowing that doesn't do. I mean, maybe it's different now with some of the NIL stuff, but for me it was let's just I'm going to go on some visits and make sure that I'm making the best decision. But once that decision is made, like we're good. Just that's the point of recruiting is to pick a school. It's not to increase the amount of followers you got or whatever. Like just keep the main thing, which is there's two main things. If you're getting recruited, uh, picking the school and making sure that's a good match. You got to, you're picking it for the right reasons. That coach is going to be there, different stuff like that, like giving them a holistic feel, not just basing it off their jerseys. And the second one would be you still have a high school season. Like for me, going into my senior year, there were plenty of guys on my team that they didn't play any more football after that, and so like that's their last football experience. And so for me to just be 1 foot out the door already, worried about Washington, that's not fair, and I don't want that to be the way that people remember playing with me at Folsom. And so just really focusing on let's do the best we can and get the most out of this last year that we can, because I will say the higher and higher up you go, people are great, but the connection isn't as much. Like once I finish, if we lose a playoff game on a Sunday, the whole team is out of Cincinnati by Tuesday. And you don't see them until April. Like people are not, they have their own families, they have their own friends, they're from different areas. And so this is the last time most likely for 99.99% of guys that you're going to play with people you grew up with, that went to elementary school with, or whatever. And so just really having an appreciation for that. And then I would also say if you're an under recruited guy that's maybe playing an offense that doesn't throw the ball a lot, that's different. Like I threw the ball a ton. I had more attempts than you can probably imagine. And so I didn't need to go throw at all these different camps. Because if anybody said anything to me, it's just, hey, like I got a ton of tape. And so just look at that. But if you're throwing the ball, 10 times a game, or you're in a different offense and you're looking to get recruited, like you probably do need to go to some of those camps. And that kind of goes back to taking an honest look at your situation and figuring out the best way to go forward. So that would kind of be my advice. Is keep the main thing, and have an appreciation for high school sports and how they will be remembered.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, last thing is, how can the audience support you?
Uh, I mean, I got social media and all that, I guess, but I don't have a whole lot on that. I'm sure we'll tag all those things, but I'm good. I got.
Absolutely. Any projects or anything
I
that
think
come?
every year we're going to do a camp. Bulldogs back home at Folsom High School for elementary, middle school kids. Do a camp. Sacktown 10. Probably keep doing that every year, where it's a quarterback invitational, but it's open invite to anybody that wants to come and learn some stuff. That's one where maybe you're a quarterback that doesn't get invited to it, and we just wanted to keep it 10 to keep it quality of work and all that. Um, but maybe you're a quarterback that doesn't get invited, and you come watch and you just do all the, take notes on the drills, and we'll let anybody sit in on meetings and stuff like that. And uh, so I guess that's not supporting me, but those are kind of the things I'm doing back in Sacramento. And outside of that, it's just doing football. So I don't have a whole lot. I don't have a foundation or anything like that for people to support.
Well, that's good. We can send people to follow you on social media, and then so your camp was Sacramento 10, is that right? The
Sacktown
what was it?
10.
Sacktown 10, and so that's a quarterback camp,
Yeah,
and
a
that'll be
free
happening
free
every
quarterback camp.
yeah.
We just had it about a week ago. It'll probably be around the same time next year, where we just invite 10 of the top quarterbacks in the area and just try and get them access to quality information for free. Put them through an
That's
on the
good.
field workout, a little bit of stuff in the weight room for some quarterback specific stuff, and then do some film stuff after that.
Okay, we'll post a link for that as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jake, and that was fantastic. Appreciate all your insight and wealth of knowledge when it comes to football, and thanks for being on the
Yeah,
show.
thanks for having me. I really like what you guys are doing, trying to get information out for free, and I think it's really valuable.